A lot of people ask like, well, how do you make it? It's like not very difficult. Like in the cookbook I read, all right, we marinate it with a red curry paste because it's Thai crispy rice. But you could do it probably with like a pesto, make it like a Mediterranean crispy rice, whatever, French, if you want. And I want people to do that. If that's kind of going to be the inroad to people like, maybe I'll go to Thailand, then I'm good with that.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Kris Yenbamroong is with us today. Thank you for joining us. I'm a huge fan of your work. I love Night+Market. And so we have Night+Market and Night+Market Song.
Yeah, we have three. So we have Song, which means two in Thai, and then we have Sam, which is three in Thai, and that's in Venice, and that's kind of like sort of a naming convention that's like, I don't know, taken from places in Thailand where they're just called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know? So it'd be like Bob's 1, Bob's 2, Bob's 3. We decided to take that.
Yeah.
And run with it.
That's perfect.
Yeah. It's easy.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's easy.
It's in order.
And it, you know, when you actually like, you don't use a number, but you spell it out, it makes it an actual name, you know? So like Song, S-O-N-G, the word.
It's a beautiful word.
It could be anything. It could be anything, and it's just Night+Market Song. And a lot of people, I think, don't really know that it's like the second one, and Sam is the third one, and it's like totally fine by me. I just want it to be a good name.
What? When did the first Night+Market open?
2010. So we're coming up on this year is 16 years, which is like, I don't know. It's like I feel like I always say like restaurant years are like dog years kind of, or like 1 is 4 or whatever, or 5, and you know 2 if you make it to 2 is a lot, and 16 is like, I don't even know. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I've
lived in LA for maybe 20 odd something years, and I remember I ordered a lot of Thai food from restaurants, went to Thai restaurants on Sunset. And I remember when Night+Market opened, it was so different and just like, I mean, obviously delicious, but like daring in the spiciness in a way that like LA people maybe were not used to, which I think was also part of like the attraction of it. And also the way that you did the interior of the restaurant was so cool. Why don't you tell me the story about how you got started in food, and then how Night+Market. So what's the origin story? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like a thing that was never meant to be, you know, which is, I don't know, like some of my favorite places are like that. And so I was born into a restaurant family. You know, my parents moved to LA, I think in the late 70s or so, and they had a restaurant called Talisai, which was on the Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. It was kind of like the first Thai restaurant that was outside of like a small hub, or like, I think it was one of the first Thai restaurants that kind of was not solely for like Thai people that moved over here to work or to do this or do that, you know? And I think my dad was really like, he was working off a loan at the time, these people who put him through school, like a bank, and he was like, you know what, there's no place to open up. There's no place to take my clients. I want to like have a nicer kind of place, which, you know, you say it now and it's not such a far-fetched thing, but I think at the time, like to have a Thai restaurant that was kind of more of a destination was like, I don't know, it was kind of out there. And so I grew up in that. And then, you know, fast forward to like 2008 or so, or 2007, I was living in New York. And, you know, my family would always kind of ask me to come back and take over the restaurant.
Were you cooking?
No, I was working in photography. I went to film school and I was working like fashion photography. I come from like a visual background. I always worked in our restaurant and, you know, cooking, waiting tables, doing all that stuff. I cooked in general, but not as a profession and as a vocation. And I just never, they would always ask me to kind of be involved in the restaurant. And they're like, you should make it another thing, or like take it to like evolve it or something. I thought, you know, I didn't want to take over the restaurant if it was just like a passive thing. Like like to be a custodian for something that already existed and has a legacy or whatever, unless I had something to offer myself. And so every year they would ask me, and I was like, I don't have any ideas that I think are worth me taking this thing over. And then finally around like that time, like 2008, I was like, you know what? I maybe do have some ideas. Like mom's food, she's from the north. My dad's from central Thailand. I was like, mom's food isn't really represented at the restaurant. And that's an issue, and I'm going to correct that. And it was simple. And I was like, that was it. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
And Talisai was kind of designed as it was authentic Thai food, but the menu selected for like, Los Angeles people.
It was like, I think at the time, which was like 1982, which is when it opened, which was the year I was born. Like my dad and his mother, who was the original chef of the restaurant. I think my dad was like, I want it to be a Hollywood restaurant, and not like Hollywood geography, but like Hollywood, the idea, or like I want to feed, Warren Beatty or whoever.
You want to be like
I want to feed Jack Nicholson,
like Thai Spago.
Yeah, exactly. And Spago was right up the hill. I mean, Spago is where like Tower Records, which became Supreme now, but like Spago was right there. And Mark Mahoney, who has Shamrock Social Club, the tattoo shop, he's in that building now, I think. And it was this iconic kind of like house on the hill, immigrant family starts a little restaurant. It's crickets, no one's coming, and they're looking up on the hill at this like mythical LA restaurant, and they aspired to be that. And so that was that. And I was like, I took over. I was like, I'm going to do, sausages, like grilled sausages, chili dips, like spicy salads, other types of curries that weren't being represented, spicy things, salty, sour things, bitter things, all these different flavors. And I was like, I just want to be a venue for these things. It wasn't a big idea. It was like, I just want to be a place that has these things. And that was like 2008 when I took over my family's restaurant. I just like fell flat on my face with it. I had these big ideas, which I think are simple ideas, but maybe they were kind of radical or something, but it just went horribly wrong because it was like, I think the restaurant, my family's restaurant, had existed for, at that time, I guess like, I can't do the math. It's like 2.5 decades or so or more. And it was established.
Yeah.
And then you go in to an established situation and you start pulling things out, and it doesn't usually go super well. And I think the issue became that it was like, it wasn't new enough for new people to come in, and it wasn't like kind of like sticking with the same stuff enough for the old folks to stay, or the old customers. And so we kind of lost both. So like no one came. And it was just like a year and a half or more of just like, I mean, we were like totally bankrupt, like totally just like, that was all on me, on my shoulders. And I was like super down. But then we got the opportunity to do something else when the space next door to the family restaurant became available. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take this spot and do something. It's like a blank slate. It's not taking something existing and trying to like redo it. It's like a blank canvas. And it was like, literally it was like a white box, it looked like an art gallery. It was like a white room. And that was the beginning of Night+Market, kind of as it is today. And that was 2010. So like 16 years ago.
So then you were able to go without needing to worry about, because you had Talisai could then remain as it always was, basically.
Exactly.
And then you could go full on into your new idea.
Yeah.
And so it's about your mom's northern Thai
That was
cooking.
kind of the impetus. Yeah. I mean, she's from the north. I like the food of the north and of the northeast, which are kind of considered two distinct regions. And I wanted to have this food, and I wanted to have like kind of interesting wines, which I was kind of being turned on to at the time. And
really?
They didn't really, I think they didn't really exist in LA. People weren't interested in them. But they were sort of existing in New York and some different cities in the States.
Like this kind of new natural wine.
Yeah, like
movement.
that kind of stuff. And this was like from 2007, 2008, 2009. And then when we opened in 2010, it was starting to become like just kind of drawn into this wine world. And I just wanted to be a venue for these wines. Like when we opened up, I think it was only maybe 8 things on the menu that we had, and we had like 30 wines. And so I looked at it as like more of a drinking place, and then like the food facilitates the drinking. Like even on our cookbook, it's like the tagline is it's Night Market, but it's food to facilitate drinking and fun having amongst friends. So that was like always the idea, but it wasn't. I would never even call it like a concept. It's not like I sat down and ever wanted to open a restaurant or anything. It just kind of like it happened, and I thought, okay, well, what doesn't exist, and can I fill that void with this thing? It wasn't anything beyond that, and then it was just like a place to go hang out myself and to drink and have my friends over and open the bottles that I want to open. And that was a big thing with the restaurant too. Like my dad always said that, because I would ask him, I'd be like, well, why is it good to have a restaurant? It looks horrible to me. Like it looks like a lot of work, and it's not super, maybe now it looks glamorous, but I think like growing up in it, it's like you see more of the problems and the challenges and how much goes into it. And I was like, why would you ever want to do this? And he's like, look, I mean, I have this corner booth. I get to have my friends over, and we get to drink wine. Like, what could be better, And I never understood that until I had it myself. And then I was like, oh, it's nice to have this. Someone comes to town. All right, meet me at the restaurant. Let's hang out. Let's, eat and drink. And it's your own place, so you can stay as long as you want, that kind of thing. And that's more or less kind of the start of Night Market.
Yeah, and it always felt like a hangout to me. And I remember, you being like excited about the wines, and also the food was so much spicier than what was normal. Normal. I guess I would say, when I say normal, I mean like LA Thai food. That like it was really refreshing to be able to like drink, and a lot of the wine is like chilled, right?
Yeah. The wine was chilled, which was not. A lot of these things I think have become like part of the vocabulary or part of the landscape.
Like chilled red was
chilled
so
red.
unusual at that time, though.
You say that at the time, and it's kind of like, unless you're in France or Catalonia or somewhere, it's like people would think you're crazy. And then, everyone is drinking like craft beers and like cocktails, and like all the restaurants had these things, like really great cocktails and like interesting beers. But those things never interested me as much as like beverages. Like when I go to other people's places, I partake, but like if I'm at home, I'm just always opening wine, and these are the wines I want to drink. And same thing, like the food was a little bit spicier, a little bit saltier, a little bit more sour, like these were not things to kind of, attenuate or tone down or something, these were things to be pushed or celebrated. And, but I was also, I think, in my 20s, either in my 20s or early 30s, probably my 20s. And that's the sort of thing you do in your 20s, is like kind of like more is more.
Yeah.
And it's like over time, I have kind of shifted a little bit as my tastes have shifted, because I think like the restaurant's just a representation of my tastes, And so as my tastes change, as I have kids, as my habits and things change, so does what we're putting on the menu at the restaurant or how we're doing it and stuff like that. I even hear this from other chefs. Like I remember the first time I met Danny Bowen, who has Mission Chinese. Like this was years ago, and he had some stuff that was like insanely spicy, but like numbing, like Sichuan peppercorn and stuff. And there was this like legend or something that his mapo tofu had like 45 ingredients or something like that, And then as he got older and was a more experienced restaurateur, became a dad and all this sort of stuff, he was like, does all that stuff need to be in there? Or like, what are the 5 or 6 or however many things that need to be in there? Let's just do those things. And maybe the extraneous stuff, it's just what you do if you're in your 20s or you're like, you want to make a statement or something. And so we started to think more in terms of that, like, okay, what can we maybe take out? How can we edit things rather than add on, put more? And it's still like to this day, I think, a process of like thinking along those lines, even at home, like when I cook at home, like the cliche, like chef thing, it's more butter, more of this, more of that. And I love butter. I love garlic. I always put more garlic. But then recently, maybe it's like hanging out with French people, but it's like maybe I can go back a little bit, and that's the thing that's interesting, instead of like way more garlic, way more butter, way more salt, way more this. And it's like stepping back. I mean, but there's a time and a place for everything. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's like part of like just maturing as a craftsperson, is like you figure out what is actually essential to express the idea or the flavor.
Definitely. And then some of it is like getting out of the way. Like, you know, I'm a chef, I'm a restaurateur. So making good food it's a minimum. Like you have to do it. But I always think about our restaurants, like all the night market restaurants, is like, we don't want to be in the way. Like we want to be there to facilitate, the same way the food is facilitating like having good wines and stuff. The whole thing is to facilitate people like hanging out and having conversations and being amongst each other and communing, doing what they do. And of course the food has to be good. You know, I'm a chef and I want it to be good, but I don't want to be like, hey, look at me. Like the food, you know, like when people would come in, and it was sort of like the early, it was like pre-Instagram or whatever. But there was like blogs and stuff, which I never knew about, because I was a late adopter. I'm a late adopter for everything, for technology. I'm bad at reading trends. Like I remember when I was living in New York and it was still like magazines, I worked in like fashion photography, and this thing, which at the time was called like web TV, like came out, and it was like, whatever, it was starting to put videos on the internet.
Right.
And I was like, this is never going to take off. Like no one wants that. People want magazines because it's so beautiful to like hold this object in your hand, and it's like the paper quality and all these different things that now no one cares about. And it's like, that's kind of how I was. I was like not good at reading these trends. I was just like kind of doing what I thought made sense, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. But I don't know why I mentioned that. It was like about the restaurants, like we don't want to kind of get in the way. So it's like we just kind of want to make it good, but not be like, hey, take a picture of me, like the food. Like you should be with your whoever, your daughter or your father or girlfriend or whoever.
Yeah,
you know?
And which is one of the things I love, is how you're getting really interesting food and things that you may not have tasted before, but at the same, it's not going to be like the waiter's like,
right,
for this, and there's this thing, and you have to sit there and nodding, and they're going to break down every single ingredient. And I like that it's not like put upon you.
Man, if it's wanted, if it's desired, great. We're there for it. We'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. I mean, I used to serve all the food in the early days. In the early days, it was like Talisai. So I wrecked my family's restaurant, drove it into the ground. We lost employees because everyone that worked there kind of had been there for so long. It was like, if you go to like Dantana's, you go to wherever, Musso and Frank's, like these places that have been around 2+ decades, and in those cases, many more, like they have families a lot of times, right? And they got to feed their families. And if there's no one coming in because this idiot son like made this however many decisions, then they got to bounce and go do something else. And so it's kind of like, that was the situation. My dad came in, he was kind of like, dude, we got to course correct this. I mean, we're all going to be living on the street if like this, because we didn't have anything else. There was just the family restaurant. And so I was like, okay, do it. And it's of course a huge blow to like my everything, my spirit and all that. And so he course corrected, but then I opened Night Market next door, and it was this other thing. But it was like, it was all kind of together. There was one door and you either went left. It's like that Matrix thing or whatever. There's
the red pill, blue pill.
You want to go left or you want to go right? Like on the left, there's this thing. On the right, there's this thing, and they're totally opposite experiences. And it would be interesting. Like some people you would think would go left, or like, I usually go left, but today I'm going to go right, and that was kind of the situation. But we didn't have any like servers dedicated to Night Market. Like I was doing the food in a small corner of the same kitchen that was servicing the family restaurant, which started to become busy again because we put the old dishes back on the menu. So people were coming back, and then Night Market was now the one that was like empty. And we had one guy who I love, who's no longer working with us, but he was just like, he was the first guy who was a Night Market like server. and he used to work in Talisai, like the main restaurant, and it was like that Superman thing where like he takes off his like whatever, he worked in like a newsroom or whatever, and like he'd take off his suit, and in the middle there's like the Superman thing, and so he would take off his tie and white shirt and apron, and then underneath there was like a gray, like whatever, like American Apparel shirt or something, whatever the thing it was at the time that was like our uniform. You would have that, and then he would serve a dish. Then he'd put his shirt back on and go to the next restaurant, and then he would keep switching back and forth. And then I would also serve food from. I would come out and like talk about the food and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just us two.
Yeah.
That was the very beginning, and it was like it was doable because there was no customers. So
Okay, so I mean, I'm just trying to imagine, like, just putting you in that just being in your shoes in that situation. Your dad having to course correct in that way, and I imagine that you probably felt like a lot of shame and like it was like a tough time, like you were saying. Like, how did you find the courage to like go and do the night market thing?
yeah,
Was that a difficult decision?
it was kind of. It was kind of a mistake, or not a mistake, like it was kind of an accident, or like we took over this space, and the initial plan was to do like a PDR, like a private dining room, or like an event space or something. And I think while we were kind of like painting it, or like cleaning it up and whatever, I was visiting, I was in Paris visiting a friend who was doing his PhD research in art history. And so he was there working at some libraries in Paris. And so I stayed with him, and, we went out to like some cool wine bars and stuff, like places that I liked. And one day he was like, I'm going to this artist talk. There's this Thai artist who's doing a talk at this place. Do you want to come? And I was like, oh, who is it? And he's like, this guy, Rikrit. And that's not how you say it in Thai, but everyone says Rikrit. And so I was like, oh, I know who that is, and yeah, I'm super into it. And his work was kind of like this conceptual sort of like performance art thing where he would go into galleries and like make pad thai and stuff, and like do a soup kitchen. And it was about like, it became known as like, I think it was called relational aesthetics. It was like people interacting with the artist, that kind of stuff. So we went to this talk, and then afterwards I was like, I'm going to say hi to this guy. One, because I'm Thai, and I know his work and all that. And two, because he was going to be in a 2-man show with another Thai artist that I was friends with who works in LA. And so I was like, yo, I'm Kris. I know your work. You're doing a show with my buddy in LA. And he was just like, hey, what's up? He's like, man, you know what? I need some sausages for my show. Like, do you know anybody who makes this Northern Thai sausage, whatever? And I was like, that's like our main thing that we do. I was like, I'll make you sausages. So he was like, all right, cool. And he was like, hey, why don't you come be a part of the performance too? So I was like in this gallery, like grilling up these sausages that I'd made. I still have photos. It was insane. And then we started hanging out, and like he came to this space, and he was like, event space? Like, why would you want to do that? Why don't you just do the food that you just did for me here? And he was kind of like it wasn't only him, but he was one of the people that kind of said that. And then, because I was at like lowest confidence level of all time kind of situation. So to do something that radical or different, deviate from the path that we had set out was like not an option, because I was just like, my soul was just completely like dead. But doing these things like kind of brought me back to life. I was like, all right, you know what? Yeah, why can't I cook this food? Just because it didn't work in that other situation, that other context, doesn't mean that it can't work in another context, like a blank slate, like I don't have any expectation from like customers who've been coming for 25 years. I could just do whatever. And so we started hosting, or I started hosting like little parties for my friends, and I'd have these wines and I'd cook whatever I wanted. It was all free. And I started doing this a lot, but we still had to pay for the space, and I don't come from a business background. So that didn't occur to me that we had to pay for it. And I come from like an art background. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do the same thing, but for the public. And that's kind of how it started, more like that. It was like, just that, trying to keep that vibe. And it was just like 4 nights a week. And then it eventually became an actual restaurant, because before it was just like a couple dishes, and like people would come in, like it would be like I remember the opening party or whatever it was, or the pre-opening party. I had a bunch of friends, just like tons of people, amazing bottles. I DJ'd, I cooked, I did all this sort of stuff. And it was the best thing in the world. And then it was supposed to open the next day. And the next day it opened and no one showed up. So it was like everyone went to the free thing and the fun thing and they were partying and drinking wine and whatever. And then when it was like paying customers, no one showed up. But then finally like 2 people would show up. Then it was 4 and then it was 8 and then it was 12. And the people who would show up, they would say, oh man, like someone told me to come in here. Do you have, like, I just came back from Thailand. Do you make this other thing or can you make this thing? And I would just tell them, because I was serving the food, I would say, well, I'll make it, but you not only have to come back and eat it because it's going to be like a pot of curry that I don't want to throw away because there's no customers, but you got to tell your friend to come too. And then I'll make this thing. And then that's kind of how the menu grew, is because people would request things. And that's how the customer base grew, because I would tell people every single table, I'd be like, you got to come back. You got to bring your friend. You got to do this. Like stuff that's like just very kind of like old school, like kind of building. Because like I said, I'm a late adopter. Even when like, what was it, like social media and stuff came around, like I didn't believe in it the same way I didn't believe in like web TV. I was like, no one's going to do this in 2 years. This is like going to be this like stupid fad. It's like for children. People want to read books. People don't want to be on their phones. And you know, we know now how that turned out. But like at the time I was like, no. It's like, I have to talk to everybody. I have to like, you know, say hi. I want to meet everybody that's coming in. It's like a blessing and a curse, where it's like, we're not a place that's kind of like, what do you call it? Like viral or whatever. But if there is like some nuclear thing that decimated all the phones, we would still be around because people like wanted to come before there was phones.
Right.
Or before there was like whatever, Instagram or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of nice to like to exist in that way. And maybe it's just because like, you know, I'm getting older or whatever. Maybe if I was younger, I'd be more into it. But like, I'm not interested in that type of thing. Like, I really miss those days. Like when we do staff meetings, I talk to all the staff, like people coming to spend money and time with us, you know, time probably being more precious. Like, we have to have a reverence for that. Like it's not, we can't take it for granted, you know? So like when you're table side, like stuff that might be expected of us, like we're a casual restaurant, like I would be like, we don't have to be any more casual. Like we're already casual. So like we show respect. People come in, you know, like people bring their parents. Like that's the ultimate sort of compliment, you know, and we have to respect that and not be like a hipster restaurant or whatever it is. And like, please don't swear table side. Please don't this and that. And over the years, it's like, okay, you know, sometimes it works 100%. And then sometimes, you know, it gets a little casual or whatever. But the idea is that like, you know, we have to respect that. And I think that comes from like growing up in the restaurant, my family's restaurant, where it's like, we also didn't have any customers in the first like 2 years. And when people started coming, we really had to respect it. And it was like, they could go here or they can go to that spot over there.
Go to that spot over there. And because there are a bunch of Thai, I mean, on Sunset, there are a bunch of Thai restaurants.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, you know, can we, like, what can we do to communicate that sort of like, hey, we're, you know, stoked when people come in.
Yeah.
And and especially to be 16 years in, it's like, we're not a new place. Like you're not even new when you're like a year old or 2 years old or something. We're 16 years old. And so we're even like more, how do you say, like not taking it for granted when anyone comes in.
Well, that's why, and that's why you have this longevity, which is actually one of the, I mean, you must be in like the 0.01 percentile of like restaurants.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, it's a huge accomplishment. And just going back to the food, I don't think a lot of Americans or any non-Thai people really understand that like there is a lot of different Thai food by region in Thailand. So kind of tell me about like what is the food that you're serving and what is the food of like northern and northeast Thailand?
Yeah. So the food of the north is you know, as you mentioned, kind of spicier. It's boldly seasoned. It's stuff that has a lot of different texture. It's stuff that I think really lends itself to helping you kind of drink and enjoy yourself. And I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm this like total alcoholic. I just want to drink wine all day, whatever. But it's like, it's food that kind of, and even if you don't drink, it's like, it kind of makes you, how do you say it? It's like makes your mouth water and kind of like, it's like, you want more, you want to have more, you want to, take a little chunk of sticky rice and drag it through a spicy salad, an herbal, spicy, bright, salad with like toasted, rice powder or something like that, and stick it in your mouth the same way you have like pita bread or something, you drag it through like a hummus or something like that. It's the same thing, but it's sticky rice, and it's, instead of hummus, it's like a chili dip, which we call namprik. And it's a lot of things like that. It's curries that kind of might function similarly. You know, it's like kind of like one of my favorite curries is like kind of from my mom's area in the north. And it's like a Burmese, I think a Burmese origin type curry, but it's like typically made with pork belly, and it's kind of braised into this dark, kind of stewy, sort of sweet, but tart kind of curry with pickled garlic and ginger and different things. It's very different from a lot of the curries that people might have in general, in restaurants, in Thai restaurants. And that was like I think that was the first curry we put on. And so it's like really fatty chunks of pork in this type of curry that has no coconut milk for one. And so it's kind of like, it might not even be recognizable as like a Thai curry, you know? And so you might have that with sticky rice. And then there's some similar ones where in the north, we would do, like, we haven't done it recently, but in the early years, in the winter, we would do this thing that that you see in the north when it gets cooler, which is called kankradang, which is like, it's kind of like a jello curry. It's like a curry that has any cut of like trotters, or any cut that has like gelatin, you know, and like when it's cooled, it hardens into a form. So you put it in like a, you know, like a tray, and then once it hardens, you sell it like by the slice. So it's like a chunk of this curry, and it's cool. It's not cold, but it's cool. And, you know, you just leave it out if you're in the countryside, you know, and then you have it with like warm sticky rice. It kind of melts a little bit onto the sticky rice, and that sort of thing was cool to me because it's so like esoteric, and it's not very commercial, and it's a pain in the butt to make and whatever. But it's like kind of has these similarities to certain like French or British things that I find interesting. And so we do that. And now it's sort of an extension of that, where we did that for a couple years. Like, I felt like it was so important to point out on the menu that these were like traditional things.
Yes.
And so I remember writing on the menu, like, you know, asterisk, like, I did not come up with any of this stuff. This is like stuff from the motherland, you know? And I felt that was important. And people would come in. It was at a time where that sort of like more regional stuff wasn't easy to find. And so it was important for me to highlight, this comes from this place. This comes from this place. But eventually it got to be that like people would come in and they would be looking at the dish, like stuff that I never wanted. They'd be like looking at the food instead of each other. Instead of talking to each other, they'd be talking about the food, you know? And again, I want the food to be enjoyed and I want it to be good, but I'd rather, like, if you're on date night, talk to your date, you know? And if you're with your kids, talk to your kids, ask them how school was, you know? And so it would start to be like that, and people were dissecting it. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, like I'm stoked when anyone walks through the door to this day, because it could disappear tomorrow, you know, and like we could close, there could be no one wanting to come in. But I do want it to be a certain way. Like, I want people to have fun and be with each other and stuff. And so it started to be like the value that we had, or that we created, was how closely it resembled this thing that was like 5,000 miles away. And I was like, this is LA. This isn't northern Thailand. Like, if you want that, just go to northern Thailand. Why would I just want to recreate something? So I started to think, like, I'm born and raised in LA. There's other things that are interesting to me and important to me. So the food started to get looser. I took that little thing off the menu that was like, I didn't create anything. And I started to be like, well, why shouldn't I create something? Or why shouldn't I, like, I'm Thai. Does Thai food have to just stop in 1979 or something? Like, can I not add something to it, you know? And not in some like really high-minded way, but just kind of like, well, my tastes are different. Here's how I do it. And like, so one of the things is like, people like when they come in is this, we do this dish called pork Toro.
I was gonna say that's one of my absolute favorite bites.
Can't ever take it off the menu.
It's one of my favorite bites I've ever had.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a big sushi guy, but first off, the name calling it pork Toro is like great.
So I
think
it
is so fucking delicious. And to anybody watching, listening, go to Night Market immediately and get a pork Toro, because I'm relieved to know that it will always be on the menu. So go grab that.
It will always be there. Please come in. I would love to grill it for you and serve it to you myself.
It's so good.
But that's pork jowl, and like Toro, generally in sushi is like the belly, except for kama Toro is like the neck. But the idea for me isn't like, I don't even know if Toro translates to belly. I would always say that like it's translates to like the ultimate thing.
It's the vibe. It's the vibe. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not, like interested in the literal thing. I'm going to make my own interpretation. And so for me, pork Toro, it's kind of the idea that you're getting the equivalent of that thing you get in sushi, but with pork. And it's, in this case, pork jowl.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of the things we do, like in Thailand, it's the whole jowl, and it's kind of sitting on like, like low kind of embers throughout the day and at a roadside shack. And you drive by and they're like, how much of it do you want? You want this much? And they chop up this much, they heat it up more, and you get it. But I was like, okay, the best part when you eat like any sort of grilled meat like that is like the char and all that. I was like, well, how can we do that for every single piece? So I was like, instead of grilling the whole piece and then cutting it up, let's cut it up, then cure it like bacon, and then put the marinade on, and then grill each individual piece. So every single piece is the best piece. It's not
and you have like grill lines on every piece.
That's the thing.
And you have like the char taste too.
Yeah.
I'm very
now I
into
want
it.
that. Yeah, it's like it's not a crazy it's a very simple idea, I think, and like all the stuff that has been popular for us over the years is a similar thing. And like, but it's like, okay, how can we make it like more pleasurable? That's what we're here to do, is like to give pleasure, to give fun, to, to have people have a good time and all that. And so this was how we were able to do it through pork. And like, there's another thing that we're kind of like known for, which is like a crispy rice salad. So it's like,
that's the larb.
No, it's kind of like larb, but with rice. So like, it's this salad that in the northeast of Thailand and in Laos, which border each other, you have, you could take like leftover rice, sticky rice, or jasmine rice, depending on the cook. And then you marinate the rice, and then you kind of press it in these little balls, like arancini, and then you have like fermented pork with it, which is like an acquired taste. And then you fry this up and you have an herb salad with it. And I thought, all right, well, again, we're in LA. Like, I think I love that version, but I don't really want to be kind of like this super esoteric purveyor of like regional Thai foods anymore. I want to make it like an LA salad, like Wolfgang Puck, Chinese chicken salad, or like Nancy Silverton chopped salad, or anything like that. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to make an iconic like Thai LA salad. And so we're like, how can we make that? All right, the same way with the pork, being like each individual one is like cured and then grilled and has the grill marks and all that sort of stuff. Instead of this big clump of rice where the outside is crispy, but the inside is kind of mushy and whatever, everything has to be crispy. And so we were like, okay, let's just make all the rice like seasoned, like Rice Krispies, but like savory, like seasoned with curry paste and all that, and then tossed in this herbal salad with like lime juice, chilies, raw ginger, all this sort of stuff. And that's our version. That's not the version you're going to find in Thailand. But like I said, we're in LA, we're in Venice, we're in Silver Lake, we're in, West Hollywood. Like, this is a version that I think speaks more to like, where I'm coming from, what I want to eat as a kid who's born and raised in LA. So.
And that style of crispy rice has become so popular, and you were doing it. And what's crazy is that kind of salad, or like it's something inspired by that, is on the menu at Merwa, at Wolfgang Puck's restaurant on Sunset. You
know what? So Wolfgang Puck, we were doing this. This is like back before when we were starting out. We do every single event that people asked us to do. Before kids, before whatever. And so it'd be my wife and I, my wife Sarah, who it's literally like, people say mom and pop, like we're mom and pop, like that's us, and we're actually there. It's not just a saying. And so we would be at an event, I remember once we were at an LA Times event and Wolfgang Puck came up, and I told him the story. I'm like, you used to cook with my grandma, like, cause he was up the street. And even when they moved to Beverly Hills, like he would come in, with his older sons, and they would order certain dishes from like my family's restaurant, and they would order takeout. They'd come in, all this sort of stuff. And, he was like, oh yeah, I remember her, of course, and they did pizzas together when he had a restaurant in Malibu. Like they did these pizzas, and she would put like green curry on these pizzas. And there are these photos where it's like, he's got like the Spago, or like, I forget what the name of the restaurant.
Granita.
Exactly. Granita. And that was like new, and it was like in Malibu, and it was sexy, and it was California, and it was like European, and it was like flatbread and pizza and all this stuff. And then she came and she was like, why don't we make Thai pizza? And so she brought curries and stuff. And so I told him the story, and he's like, I totally remember. And he's like, what do you have here? And I was like, this is our crispy rice salad. And we have like 50, little bites, little dishes plated up. And then he just reached into like the mixing bowl to the one we had and just like went and like chef style. But the ultimate compliment too, where like he wanted it, and I was like, we were stoked. We were starting out. We're like, this is the guy. It's like, for me, he's the top, and he just went in like that and grabbed it. And I was like, all right, I'm not saying that like that is a direct line to it being at Miroir, but hopefully it like lingered there. And I know a lot of the guys who like cooked at Spago and stuff, and like I love them. I love going to Spago. And, sometimes I'll bring a bag of like fried chicken sandwiches, crispy rice, pork toro, sticky rice, and just like bring it to them, because they always take care of us when we go in. So I bring it to them. I respect them. They're like, I think they're iconic. And so to know that is great. It's like, I think it's like more people should be eating that. It's not not just at our place. Great. Have it somewhere else.
It's awesome. I mean, Miroir, I feel like Miroir is, it's all different. It's all like Wolfgang's kind of, Chinois was his like, OG kind of Asian restaurant that he did. And Miroir is all different types of Asian food kind of Wolfganged out. And, he chose, I think that he chose your dish to be like, this is like going to be the Thai dish on the menu.
I'll own it. I'll say it. It's just like the thing of like Toro. I don't care what it translates to. I'm going to just say it's this, and I'll just say, you know what? He was inspired that one day when he stuck his fist in the mixing bowl and just grabbed it and whatever. Like he anointed the crispy rice. Yeah. And then now it's like available at his place, which is a huge, and another place. I mean,
it's been at Squirrel, and it's been, and now it's like,
Jessica used to come in across the country. She used to come in a lot in the early days when it was just one location, and she asked about it, because a lot of people ask like, well, how do you make it? And it's a process, it's in our cookbook. You can learn how to make it. It's like not very difficult, but there's no like basis for it in other places kind of, and it was a new type of ingredient that people were seeing you could use it anywhere. And I'm like in the cookbook I read, all right, we marinate it with a red curry paste kind of, but you could do it probably with like a pesto or some sort of thing and make it like a Mediterranean crispy rice or a whatever, French or Greek or something. So cool. And you could do that. And if you want, and I want people to do that. And that's our approach. We want to kind of have people, if that's kind of going to be the inroad to people, like maybe I'll go to Thailand, maybe I'll go check out this, some of these roadside shacks that you're talking about in the book. If the kind of like the gateway drug for that is the crispy rice or the pork toro, then I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm like so happy about that.
It's awesome. And I can kind of see as you're telling the story about like how your confidence is like coming back moment to moment. I bet that was like a really encouraging moment when Wolfgang is like, this is so good,
Yeah, exactly. It's, like, cause I don't know, we're the new guy there. Like we're at this event, and, there's all these established restaurants, chefs, like big name chefs and whatever. And we're just like kind of weird little restaurant that opened up next to the parents' restaurant and blah, blah, blah. And then my wife, who also, she comes from like like fashion writing background. I come from photography, apart from like my time at our restaurant, our family's restaurant. And so it's kind of like, like what are these guys like art students doing it? Like, I think in some of the early reviews, they actually said that. They were like, it feels like an art project or something. And I was like, okay, I'll take that as a compliment, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because
But
you were a
it was
film
great.
student and a photographer.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, because it's like, oh, this seems, maybe on paper, it seems like this is a big pivot, but in a way though, you are really creating a holistic experience and a
Yeah.
story for your guests.
Well, so at the time, like I was in late high school, senior year, when you're supposed to be doing all this stuff with college exams or whatever, SATs and stuff. I was into photography and like ditching school. That was the two things I was into. So I was like, okay, well, ditching school doesn't lead to anything. So maybe photography can lead to something. And then it just felt like photography was like too one-dimensional to like study for 4 years, at least in my mind. And so I was like, well, film, you know, there's a lot of stuff. You could do location sound, you could do any sort of the crafts, you know, and, you know, writing, directing, producing, editing, all that. And that sounds interesting. I'm into that. I like New York. Okay,
And you live in Hollywood.
I lived in Hollywood. I don't want to go to USC or whatever, but all right, let's try this NYU thing. And I worked every day after school to like do a portfolio. And you know, I don't know if it's still this way, but back when I was doing it, they tell you to apply to like 8 schools or whatever. And it's like 2 safety schools, 2 reach schools, and like 4 in the middle or something. And I was like, I didn't get into any single school except for the school that I tried to get into, which was NYU, because I cared about it. But I was like, I went there to study, not because I really wanted to make films, but I thought it was I thought it would make me kind of a better human and like kind of, like it wasn't like I'm going to get this degree in accounting so that I can be an accountant, you know? And it was like, it was a cool, interesting thing to study. And there's a lot of dimensions to it. And you get to learn to work with other people and all this sort of stuff. And that was my roundabout way to get to where I probably was always going to be, is in my family's restaurant, which I don't look at like Night+Market as like a new thing. I look at it really as like an evolution of what I've always been doing with my family since, you know, I was born into it. Like I said, 82 restaurant opens, I'm born same year. I spend all my time, like a lot of immigrant families, there's no babysitter. So you're hanging out at the restaurant, you're in the office, you're in the kitchen, you're on the floor from birth till you take over. And that was kind of the thing. I just needed the detour of like living in New York for 8 years and going to school and working in fashion photography to come to the realization that I should be doing this thing. And like I said, I'm a late adopter to everything. Like, it doesn't matter. Like Nirvana's on the radio. I didn't care. Then like 10 years later, I start telling people, man, have you listened to Nirvana? And like, are you stupid? Are you crazy? Or like David Bowie, or like when everyone was like, there's poke all over the place. I was like, I don't even know what this is, you know? And then like years later, I'd be like, man, this poke stuff is really good. It's like always like this like roundabout way. And even with this, like I didn't have a smartphone until way late. I had like the flip phone, and I was really into doing stuff the most difficult way possible. And like, you know, I'd have a Thomas guide in the car, which like, if you're not from LA, you don't know the Thomas guide, but if you're in LA and you work in film, or you're a delivery driver or any sort of thing, you know, it's this book that was like $30, which is a lot of money. Certainly at the time. And then it would have all the streets in it. And I was like, I'd rather have the Thomas guide than to have a phone where you can look stuff up.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, no, that's completely insane. I should get the phone. Like,
Well, yeah, eventually you got busy enough that
I got busy enough.
I need to
like,
actually like, no.
Yeah.
Or I'd print it out on MapQuest
Yeah.
was the thing. And you'd print it out, but you did not know where the fuck you were. So you're looking at a map and you're like, first you had to figure out, where am I right now?
Yeah. Printing out maps is insane. And it's like, it's such a roundabout way to like do things, you know?
Yeah.
But that's what I did. Like without the iPhone, I would print out, go to like whatever youth hostel I was staying in France, and then like print out all the things in the communal computer. And then I'd have my file of like roads to get to winemakers that I wanted to visit. And I would show up with like my printed out MapQuest or whatever.
Yeah.
But now
You're like
I
an
got
old
iPhone.
soul or something.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know.
It's really interesting.
It's odd. It's like, it's when I met my wife, she was like, man, what are you doing? This is like absolutely insane. But I think it's like over the years, I've rubbed off onto her and she's rubbed off onto me. And like, you know, she's kind of, I mean, I wouldn't, the restaurants wouldn't be what they are without her, and it's like, even though like I started it, I would have gone down that road of total psychosis of not using technology, of not doing any of that stuff. And my wife came in maybe like a year and a half into Night+Market and completely like, she was like the missing puzzle piece, right? And like now she does like so much stuff that I don't do. That's like great.
That's great. Going back to growing up Talisai, do you remember any like filmmakers or artists who were like regulars there? Like who would come in?
I mean, everybody in those days, like Warren Beatty came in, like Jack Nicholson. I remember pulling up in like stuff that like is straight out of a movie or a movie of the movies, like kind of like a satire or something. Like pull up in a stretch limo with, some very beautiful ladies and him and like crazy, like I don't know, like him in The Departed, like with all his like leopard blazer or whatever, like he looked like that. He looked like what you want him to look like and was like super cool. So it'd be like, people like that, like Wolfgang Puck, Bob Dylan, I remember like would be like writing. This is like 80s, 90s Bob Dylan, like writing stuff, lyrics or whatever, in the, on the booth. At the time, the family restaurant had a big booth. Like Geffen Records was down the street, so it'd be like Guns N' Roses, whatever the other bands were on there. I remember Harrison Ford came in. I was like really into Indiana Jones because I was into like adventure stuff at that age. And he gave me an autograph. And I was particular and weird and psychotic even then, where I didn't like the way his autograph looked. And so I like took the Sharpie and like embellished it. And I was like, now it looks better. And of course it's like messed up. It's like, not that I got it for the value, the monetary value, but it's like, I would do that. It's like getting a nice painting and then you're like, what, let's add a little brown right here. It's like,
yeah, Harrison Ford is a boring signature. Like you got to try to plus it up a little. That's no problem.
Yeah. I love to this day, Hollywood, the Roman, like I had to get away from it to see how awesome it is. And like, like we're up here kind of, obviously like without specifics, we're in the Hollywood Hills, and it's like, I don't know if you've seen that movie Shampoo with Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
And he's like riding the motorcycle and he has cool hair and like it's a hairdresser. Like that's like one of my favorite movies. And like, I don't necessarily want to be that, but like the spirit of that movie and him and all that is like kind of a cool sort of thing. It's a cool fantasy, even though it's based on a real guy, but it's like a kind of a cool idea and fantasy. But yeah, I don't know. I've like, it's a cool life, that I continue to get to live and be blessed with and like get to work with my wife and like cool people. And I think the idea that like, I like that I get to continue like my family's thing and their story and like I'm independent and I do things my way, but I like the older I get, the more I realize like I'm kind of doing stuff that's really not far from what my dad, it just takes a different form. But it's like when he started out, all he was trying to do was like fill a void that he thought existed. And it was like Thai food and wine. And like, it was just different wines and different Thai food.
Or Thai food with like a restaurant with like kind of like service that Westerners, people who would go to a restaurant like Spago, could like get into. Like you were kind of saying that it's a Thai restaurant that's not only for Thai people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the idea was like, there were probably, I mean, in terms of total number, there probably weren't that many Thai restaurants in the late 70s, like the way there is now. The same way there's not a lot of anything. Like I remember my dad saying, this is way back in the day, and he's like, I read somewhere that people eat, within like however many miles of their house, like 3 miles or something of a radius. And obviously that's different now where people will like drive 2 cities over to have a taco or to have the best, banh mi or this or that. But back in the day, at least when I was a kid, like the early 80s and stuff, it seemed that way where, people would eat what was around and it wasn't this like destination thing wasn't as much of a thing, and like people having all this information and stuff at their fingertips wasn't a thing. And so, you know, he was like, I have to go to where my crowd is, you know. I remember he would do crazy stuff like, because he comes from like poverty, you know, he comes from like extreme poverty, and he was like, I want to be like serving these types that he would see in movies and all this sort of stuff. And he would tell me, be like, you know Jerry Bruckheimer is? And I'm like, yeah, he's made big movies, you know, like blockbusters. He's like, yeah, well, I just like opened up the yellow pages and I like, or something. He found like Jerry Bruckheimer's production office number or something and like called and was like, can I speak to Jerry Bruckheimer? You know, like stuff like that. Like, I have a new restaurant, you should totally come. And like stuff like now people like, you know, email and it's like 50 steps before you maybe sit down with someone. He would just kind of knock on doors and just be like, hey, I have a new restaurant. Like, maybe you might like it.
Yeah.
My name's Prokis. Come in, you know, like,
Yeah.
very kind of like old school, and probably the product of like growing up with nothing, where you have to make moves, you have to make something happen. So I was like, you know, I grew up more comfortable than that, and like not well off, but you know, not living in poverty. And so I didn't have that. And I was like, okay, well, how can I like sort of like recreate or like tap into that energy a little bit?
That
and like
fearlessness.
that kind of like, well, why shouldn't someone come to my restaurant? You know, like, am I not good enough? Like, yeah, I didn't go to culinary school, but whatever. But maybe the restaurant's better because I didn't go. Because if I did go to culinary school, then it would maybe be like all these other restaurants. But because I didn't, and because I think about things in this weird roundabout way, like maybe it makes the restaurant what it is. And this like anti-aesthetic or whatever that like has since like, there are like people send us photos from like other cities, like in Europe, like Copenhagen and Paris or here. And I'll be like, man, this looks a lot like, did you guys open up here? And then I'd be like, wow, that's really crazy, because like the motif or design or whatever, if you could call it that, comes out of like, for one, I'm colorblind, so I don't even see colors the way other people do. So the colors that I pick, it's like you're copying some guy who doesn't even see colors right, and who has this like weirdo kind of aesthetic. It's not even something you should copy or whatever, you know, but whatever, it's a compliment. But it's like, it's funny that like there have been like stories written about the aesthetic that like came out of this restaurant when it was never that. We didn't have a budget. And I tried to like just, you know, the thing, like all our restaurants kind of have this like blue painted on the bottom of the wall, and the top half of the wall is, or the top like 3/4 is orange. And it came from like this photo shoot that I was working on in New York, where the wall was painted in this like French blue on the bottom, and the top was like this kind of off-white. I thought it was excellent. I thought it looked nice. And I was like, I remember that. I was like, I'm going to use that someday. I don't know in what, but I'm going to use it. That was the reference. And I was like, what are some real Thai colors? And I was just like, I remembered when you go into like the wet markets, like a lot of the colors you see on buildings and advertisements are these like really saturated matte kind of colors. And so I picked them. And so it like comes from something. Like everything at the restaurant is like a reference from that. And like at the Silver Lake one, my wife took a picture the other day, because I forget some of this stuff is hanging on the walls. It's like we had this, some squatters were living in the space, I guess before we took over, like some like punks, you know, punk rockers. And they were hanging out, whatever. And there was this like weird photo of like Al Gore. And it was like, had some like punk rock, like anarchist graffiti or something on it, and like scrawled on it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. We should save that, you know? And then that became like, that was like when we took over. That was day one before we opened, like a year before we opened or whatever. And we just saved it. I put it in like a portfolio or something. And now we just like tacked it to the wall since 2014. And it's not like, I don't know anything about Al Gore really, but I just like, it's this like artifact that we found from these like squatters. And I was like, I'm going to use it. It's not an aesthetic. It's not a design choice or whatever. It was just kind of like, you know, maybe a document of like the history of the place. And that's kind of like the aesthetic kind of evolved that way into what it is today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your dad had this vision, you know, he kind of set a trend in this way, and he made this like kind of iconic thing, and he was like going after what he wanted. I imagine he was watching like Hollywood movies and or like VHSs or something, or like did
Yeah.
he have that? Like, where was he getting into this idea of Hollywood, do you think?
Yeah, I think from movies, I think from coming over even before he moved here, like when
Yeah.
he came over as an exchange student, like, and, would see movies, would like
Yeah.
listen to, the music of the day,
Yeah.
like, and even if it wasn't American music, like take like the Stones or something, it's not American music, but it kind of takes on a life here too.
Yeah.
And it's closer to being American than it is to being Thai or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he kind of, I think, started absorbing these cultural like references since that age, and
Yeah.
just
And movies are a big deal in Thailand.
a huge deal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you kind of saw style and sensibility and aesthetics and stuff, like, was mainly through movies. And it wasn't, I don't think as many movies went over as like today, right? So there would be a selection, like this movie would get distributed in that market or something, but not every movie like it is now, and that kind of thing. And like
The Jerry Bruckheimer movies would get
Yeah.
distributed there.
Yeah. And like now you can see everything from your phone, and but the version of like music and fashion and whatever that would go over, even when I was there in the early 90s in Bangkok, like it was this version that was like a little bit skewed, a little bit like off, but it gave it character. Or what, like now you could just create a facsimile of something where you're like, okay, you want to be like, like a late 70s New York punk rocker, and that style and that attitude and that whatever, then you can recreate that exact thing over there. And it's just a facsimile. But back in the day, it would be like, if you wanted something, it would be someone's brother's cousin getting one cassette tape and then like copying it 50 times, and then, or a VHS that you trade around and everyone copies. And then now the 20th copy is like so degraded, and
That's
you
lo-fi.
watch that and it's lo-fi. And so it's like more of an interpretation
Yeah.
of this other thing rather than a copy of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of interesting.
I absolutely love that, because what gets lost in translation actually becomes a new ingredient or facet
100%.
to the thing, or what gets changed in translation. And I love how your work is just about, as your confidence grows, especially, like you're just chasing your own taste. And it's like I'm thinking about the moment where you decided you don't want to be like a museum to old dishes, and that you are actually, you know what, I don't need to have that disclaimer that I have to like just replicate what existed
Yeah.
already, that you can do it your own way and make it the way that you like it, when it comes to the space and the way that you're serving the wine, and even the way that you want the customer experience to be,
Yeah.
is all based on what you would want it to be, right?
Man, like there's one thing. So one of the references now that it's like ironic, I guess, but one of the references that I have now is what my family used to serve, so it's like I try to go away from this thing and whatever, and then now like however 16 years in, I'm starting to look at like the early Talisai menus,
The golden triangle.
the golden triangles. My dad had and I guess my grandma, because she was the chef, she put this dish on the menu that was like, she's from central Thailand, but she spent a couple years down south, and the flavorings are really different. The seasoning, the dishes are really different down south. And there's this one dish that's kind of like a satay, but it's called kai kola, and it's like a chicken satay, but instead of skewered, it's sandwiched between two chopsticks. It's like a piece of meat in between two chopsticks, and on the end, to seal it, you either tie like a banana leaf or a wire, more commonly. Obviously, we wouldn't do that here, but it's like delicious, and the curry is kind of like bright with tamarind, and then it has coconut sugar, so it's kind of sweet. It's like the perfect dish. My dad puts it on the menu, and it's like, he's like, this is gonna kill it. This is like, who doesn't want like this, like grilled chicken on a skewer and with these types of flavors, tamarind, coconut sugar, salt, there's a glaze, there's char, and no one ordered it. And he was like puzzled and whatever. And I think at some point it was like, you know what? It's like no one knows how to say it. It's not like now everyone knows every single thing. And so he was like, all right, let's maybe change the name to something like kind of maybe a little bit closer to something. And he was like, all right, let's call it like Phuket Chicken. And like Phuket is an island down south, but it's spelled Phuket. And so people started ordering it, and we're like, I'll have the fuck it chicken. And it just became this thing. And like none of the servers would correct the customers. And I think they kind of got a kick out of it. And it just like took off. And that fuck it chicken like became a big thing, one of the best sellers. And so now recently I was like, all right, you know what? We should do that. But with like lamb belly, or we'll do like lamb belly satay. I mean, but it's directly pulled from my grandma's fuck it chicken.
Fuck it.
So fuck it. So I might just like, I should probably just change it. Fuck it lamb,
If you're in a street fight and you need a weapon from the kitchen that is not a knife, what are you What are you taking into battle?
You know what? I'm gonna give you an answer that's kind of like maybe odd, but through training jujitsu, I've been indoctrinated with this idea that like how you train is how you fight, So it's kind of like you train this sort of thing, rear naked choke, whatever it is, like that's going to be your go-to when shit hits the fan. And so I don't train with knives or anything like that. And the thing with having a knife, bringing a knife to a fight.
No, it's no knives anyway.
Oh, no knives?
Yeah.
Or a mallet that you pound out of veal parmesan or whatever. If I bring a mallet, it could easily be turned on me. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to rely on my other stuff. But actually a mallet's pretty good. I might like just bonk somebody.
Yeah, the mallet bonk is not terrible. Yeah.
I don't want to fight.
But you're already in the mind of like, you're going to de-escalate. And then if you have to, you're going to disarm another chef and take their weapon.
Yeah. And then invite them in for some gamay and some pork Toro and some crispy rice and say, hey, come on, like, can this not be handled, convivially with some natural wine and spicy Thai food?
Right, right. And then when they're lulled, that's when you hit them with the mallet.
Yeah, exactly. Or I hire them. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I have an open mind, I'm like, I'm down for whatever. And that's kind of how I live.
I love it. Do you have kids?
Yeah, I have a daughter. I have a son. I had a son. He passed away August of 24. He was born in 22, and then he got sick like 6 weeks in. We're actually at Kispaka, and then we found out he got sick. And like going through that, like all the time he was sick, and then after he passed away, I kind of like stepped away from the restaurants. And then only in the past like maybe, I don't know, like 6 months or something, I've started to kind of like wade back in and be like, you know what? Like I want to do this again, like more actively, not just kind of like in the way that I had been doing, because my life completely changed, It's like new things percolating,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. When you wake up in the morning, like, are you thinking about cooking? Like, are you getting, like, where is your head?
When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is my daughter. So like I usually...
And how old is she now?
She's 5.5, and it's like the 5.5 years has gone by like insanely quick.
Yeah.
And so you better like make every day count in terms of that, So it's kind of like, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
Kind of first and foremost. And then in terms of like everything else that we do, like we try to travel like a fair amount. It's like she becomes a part of that. It's not like, she didn't go on every single trip, but the majority of the trips she's with us. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of like a really good traveler. And I think about what I want her to see. I want her, like the same way with my son, like I wanted him to see all these sorts of things through going to these restaurants, through meeting these winemaker friends of ours, through meeting these chef friends of ours, through seeing different things, like school is important, but like we'll definitely pull her out of school if we're like maybe in a couple of weeks we're going to go to Spain. We're like, all right, we'll pull her out for a week. Let's go to Spain and see some winemaker friends of ours. And so, yeah, that's kind of the first thing I think about.
I think that what you're saying resonates really strongly with me because it's about like and what you're teaching your daughter is to just kind of like approach the world with curiosity. And I think some of the great lessons that you've learned and been able to impart involve kind of just discovering it on your own and discovering who you are rather than trying to simply emulate something or trying to be something other than
Yeah.
yourself. And that's where, if you can know yourself, you can discover your taste, and then you can make something that is true and
Yeah.
like honest. And I think that is more important than this, because craft you can train, but character
Right.
is something that you have to build your entire life.
Yeah, I think, you know, making whatever sort of work you make, you know, whether it's, you know, documentaries or food or anything, you make a restaurant or a bar, it's kind of like you're saying, this is my take, you know, this is what a restaurant is, you know, like, this is how I define it. If I were a dictionary, this would be my definition of restaurant or whatever. And so I only know what I know, you know, I mean, there are some chefs that are really like great encyclopedic, you know, like incredible, like can do any genre, any cuisine, any whatever. And some of them being friends of mine. And I'm just like so envious that like, but I just know what I know and I know what my tastes are. And I try to learn more about other things. Like as I get like interested in other cuisines, of course, you have the curiosity and you're a craftsman. You want to learn, hey, how do they do that?
What was the first taste that you can remember ever eating?
There was this thing at the time where in the whatever back in the day, if you had this kind of like immigrant family business or restaurant, there would be the thing that you would kind of feed the customers, and there'd be the thing that you would eat between lunch and dinner, you know? And I became aware of that at like a really young age because I used to spend all my time there, and it would be like certain things on the menu. And then, you know, when the customers left and we'd close the door, lock the door, it would be like more of the stuff that we serve at the restaurant now, you know? And so one of the first ones I remember was like a really kind of a fiery, it's called namprik dadang. So it's like, I guess would translate to like a red eye chili dip, you know? And so it's sweet, it's tart, it's salty. You could get like a base from any sort of like fish or like, you know, sort of anchovy type fish or something else. And it's spicy, and you kind of either dip like a wad of sticky rice or like grilled meat or some sort of vegetables or whatever and make a bite. And I remember seeing it and being curious about it, you know, and just being like, let me get some of that, you know, like kind of, it was not what I would typically eat. And I asked for something, let me give me some, and then I'd be like, it's really spicy. It's like, you know, I was super young. And I said, "Kachio chio," which means like, I just want like a little, like, I just want to graze it. Like, I just want the rice to kind of like, I don't want a wad or a dollop of it. I just want a little graze of this thing. And it just became this, like, that became, like a nickname or like a reference, and people would see me and they'd just say, "Kachio chio," you know, like, here comes that guy who just wants a little bit of the salsa. He doesn't want the whole salsa. He just wants a little bit. And so that was kind of one of my first, I think, like formative, like food memories, is like being in the kitchen with all the cooks.
How spicy was it?
It was really spicy. And
What happened when you ate it?
I liked it is what happened. Yeah, I liked it. And it was like, you know,
Did they like applaud you? Like, were they psyched?
They were.
I know
yeah,
that.
It's a weird, I guess not weird. It's like it's a thing where any Thai kid person, you know, is aware of this thing where when you eat certain things, you get a I don't know what to call it, a cred, a credibility, or a props, or whatever it is.
Yeah, he can hang.
He's into it. He can hang. Because my dad wasn't into that stuff. Like, he's into it now, but through me. Like, I kind of opened his eyes to stuff that he wasn't. I think he was like, a lot of this food comes out of also like poverty and stuff, you know, or it's like, or a culture around, like a culture where it's like you have modest things. It's not the best things. And my grandma was cooking what would be called like, it's called like royal cuisine, where it's like a royal palate, where it's like a lot more nuanced. a lot more, something I've come to really appreciate. Like some of the best food in Thailand right now is this sort of like central Thai ancient recipes kind of a thing that's super nuanced. The stuff I was interested in was like roadside
Yeah, it's more
shack
like
food.
street food
Street
versus what's being
food.
served in
Exactly.
like that's being cooked for the wealthier people.
Yeah. And, you know, and I'm learning now that both are good, but the thing that kind of grabbed me by the balls, like pulled me in, was this sort of really aggressive, assertive type flavor, fatty cuts of meat,
Yeah.
charred with a spicy dip, with sticky rice, which, you know, there's like kind of a lot of things, cultural things in Thailand where it's like, oh, you know, sticky rice, it's kind of like, it'll really like, I don't know, it's like makes you bloated or like fills you up fast, you know? And it does, but it's like, okay, whatever. Is that a bad thing? We're feasting right now. It's not like, you know, we're not dieting or whatever, you know? And so, yeah, like they were all like, yeah, like, you know, Kris is cool. He can hang. And it's funny because my grandma, who was like my dad's, you know, partner in crime here, was more into this stuff, even though she didn't really serve it. Cause it's like, a lot of it's really out there too. Like it's sort of like, you know, pungent, it's stinky, you know, it's like, if you're not accustomed to it, it's like, it's a real kind of stench, and it wafts throughout the dining room.
Yeah.
It doesn't just stay in one spot.
Yeah.
It's like, it goes throughout the dining room. And so it was just at the time, like not something they would do.
Yeah. I think that's cool. Like, so I feel like you're getting the cred of getting to, you know, be one, like accepted. And then that taste and it's not only just the taste, like the positive feeling of that kind of sticks with you, you know?
Yeah.
I remember like one of the reasons that I loved, it became like obsessed with sushi, was because went to Japan. Like my dad took me when I was 2, when I was 4, and then if you would get sushi, you know, they would give me mostly they would give me like kapamaki or cucumber roll, but then they would give me like, oh, here's a piece of eel, and I would eat it. I was like, oh, he likes it, like, oh, he ate the uni,
Yeah.
and then getting the props on that, like, you just feel like, oh wow, like that's just like, not only sure it tastes good, and then you have like a courage in terms of food,
Yeah.
but then you also just feel like this validation of like,
Yeah. That
this
validation,
food just, it
everyone wants
reminds
it.
you
Yeah.
subconsciously of that feeling of acceptance.
Yeah, and to feel accepted in that way, you know, is great. And it's like this thing about, you know, the rest with Night+Market, like me, I'm here to serve people, but as you were saying, it's like, all right, I've also had this other benefit to like me finding my identity and getting to explore things, and kind of like being a Thai kid growing up in LA. I'm kind of like, well, am I American? Am I Thai? Am I both? Am I some other category? And it's like getting to explore that, and then having a similar experience when I first, like I've been traveling to Thailand since I was a baby, and then and then I moved there eventually in my teens. And so when I'd go around and eat, you know, at the street stalls and stuff like that, and like, first of all, like people didn't expect me to be Thai. They thought I was like Japanese or something. And so like they would try to like speak English or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm Thai. And then when I'd eat certain things, and I'm not talking about like, you know, eating for sport or like a gross out thing or whatever, but I would eat things that were a little more like esoteric. There would be that kind of validation, like, okay, yeah, you can, you know, you're invited to the party later, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good feeling. And it's like, it's a good way to make friends and
Yeah.
all that. It's great.
Yeah. The other super validating thing, I bet, and the feeling that you're making something that really is your taste, and a space that your taste, and then people like it, like, that's awesome.
Man, there's nothing better than like,
That's the best.
these days, especially like, I think each year older Night+Market gets, like the more I appreciate it, or I'm like, oh wow, like people have really, not only have they stuck with us, but somehow there's new people coming in, which must only happen through like word of mouth, because like we don't do a lot of like posting about our restaurant, and like my fantasy is to go back to like a time before all that sort of stuff. And so like, I'm trying to live that way, even though I know it's like, it's a part of the fabric and the reality now. So it's like when new people do come in and they say like, oh yeah, my neighbor told me to come in. I'm like, oh yes, like, thank you. There's still people talking to each other and recommending places in person. And like, it's really cool. But yeah, it's the validation of people being stoked on the food and the drink is incredible. And yeah, I don't take it for granted because I'm like, yeah, this could, people tomorrow could be like, you know what? This doesn't speak to me anymore. I'm out, And I'm like, okay, I hope I can keep like kind of doing things that people find worthwhile, and like worthy of their time and money and all that. And they can keep like enjoying meals with us. And that's kind of, it's a simple goal. It's difficult, but it's like, that's basically all it is in terms of like the restaurants,